Hi, Jane.
Hi, how are
Hey,
you?
good. Thank you so much for joining me today. I know that so for those who are tuning into this video, can you give us more information about who you are and what you do?
Well, my name is Jane Aceituno. I have a private family law practice, the Law Offices of Jane Aceituno, that I've run for the last 8 years. And I have been an attorney for 15 years. So I have a lot of experience with litigation. And I do the full range of family law litigation, everything from divorce and child custody to domestic violence and prenuptial agreements, and also calculating child support and spouse support and dividing up assets. I serve all of the Bay Area counties, including San Francisco and Alameda and San Mateo. And I'll also go as far as Sacramento. So that's me in a nutshell.
Wow, you cover a lot of ground. That's awesome.
Mhm.
Do most attorneys cover that much ground, or is that something or is that more specific to the attorney?
It all depends on the attorney. Some people specialize in a particular county. Some people go more far afield. I think I'm unique in that I really do go far. I have a case in Sonoma. I've worked as far as Sacramento and even farther up north past Sonoma and Napa. So, and I'll do Santa Clara County as well. So I'm happy to work everywhere. There's a need for competent counsel everywhere, and I'm happy to provide that care.
Nice. Well, it's also super helpful because if since you do family law, if one person is in one area and someone else moves out of the area and goes to another surrounding county, then you're able to service that.
Yes.
Okay. Well, so these are some interesting times. And so how has COVID, this whole COVID situation affected your practice?
Well, one is the very nature of my communication with my clients in the courts. I used to meet with my clients physically for in-person consultations. I don't do that anymore, but I'll do telephone and video consultations. And I know my clients really appreciate that because they can't leave their homes. And so I try to accommodate everyone that I can.
Mhm.
Also, with my communications with the court, we're doing video hearings now
Mhm.
and telephone hearings. So I'm able to present myself to the court with my clients and serve them accordingly. Just had a hearing yesterday, a 2 hour long Zoom hearing before the Sacramento Superior Court. My client was there with her Spanish interpreter on Zoom, and I was there on Zoom, and we went through three motions. It was kind of brutal, but we did it, and we got some great results. So, video, telephone communication, hearings. That's one way that my practice has been impacted, and I've work in a couple different areas, such as custody. But we can get into that later.
Okay, since you mentioned custody, so what happens when one parent moves out of the area and they have joint custody? What happens at that point?
So some of it is common sense. You need to, as with any other custody situation, put some thought into thinking about what is in the best interest of the child. In California, at least, the best interest of the child standard applies to most custody situations. And you want to think about what's in the best interest of the health, safety, and welfare of the child. So parents have to be very honest with each other and transparent about what they think the child should do in terms of transfer between the parents for visitation. The courts generally disfavor one parent, you know, automatically and unilaterally blocking visitation. That's a cause for an emergency hearing and will generally not be allowed unless there are extreme extenuating circumstances like a positive corona test or having a very elderly or immuno-impaired family member occupying one of the homes. And even then, there can be some allowances for visitation. Um, and so people have to use their best judgment. People need to evaluate what the care of an attorney the existing shelter-in-place orders, and also understand that custody law as it exists in California has not been altered dramatically by the legislature or the courts. Not enough time has passed by for that to happen. So you have to keep the existing law in mind.
Okay, okay, that's fair enough. I mean, I get friends that tell me that, you know, someone wants to move out of state, and especially right now with real estate, people are able to work more at home, and some people are entertaining the thought of maybe going out of different counties because they don't need to pay high prices, let's say in San Francisco or the Peninsula or and maybe some parts of the East Bay. They're like, let me just go a little further and I just could enjoy more space and be comfortable. So it's interesting right now because a lot of people are trying to figure out their moves, their lifestyle, their quality of life. But that is something good to go over and how that
Yeah.
affects the family.
And a party wanting to do a move away needs to consider that it is the most contentious form of litigation. And you can't just get a move away overnight because there can be a transfer of custody and visitation based on a move away, especially out of state or even out of the country. And, you know, you may have a trial 1 year from out of the present and maybe even a psychological evaluation. So people need to think twice before making a sudden move because they may lose custody of their children.
Got you. Okay, that's good to know. So, what happens in real estate when a divorce happens? And I think some people, you know, find themselves in situations where you know they own property, they did it, you know, they bought together, and maybe it's not working out. So then, at that point, what steps do they take? And is that something that you could help with?
Sure, it's a regular part of my practice. There are different scenarios. If property is community property altogether, meaning that it was acquired during the marriage and paid for with community funds, then at the time of divorce, they can sell the home, split the proceeds. One party can buy the other out with a refinance or through the use of alternative funds that they have that could cover the other spouse's portion of the equity. And I'd say those two are the most common forms of dispensing with community property. Sometimes one person will acquire a home as their separate property before the date of marriage, or maybe as part of inherited property. But the community may contribute to the payment of the mortgage and other costs, and the community, which is considered the joint couple, their investment has to be compensated for that investment. And so that's the subject of litigation. And I'm in one very messy case right now where we have 3 properties and we're figuring it all out and we're very close to settling this case. So we're just fine tuning the numbers. So that's what I typically see.
Oh, okay. So since you brought that up, someone has property prior to marriage, and during marriage, the spouse is contributing funds to help maintain and make payments, so that it will be a consideration if, because you know sometimes people go, oh, if you got something prior to marriage, then it's not part of community property. So there is a chance that that can also there could be some dispute with that.
Yes, the community can get some contribution back. Basically, not only the principal that went into the payment of the mortgage, and the mortgage is the typical way that you acquire an interest for the community. So not only do you get reimbursement back for some of the mortgage that was paid, but also a portion of the appreciation in the home during the marriage.
Oh, interesting. Okay, well that's interesting information for some folks out there that might be in this position.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so here's a topic that someone brought up to me, and I just wanted to see your thoughts about it. If one spouse gets arrested or sued, can they quickly divorce to divide and separate the assets so the other spouse is protected? So it's protecting assets as much as possible. Is that something that can be done to deviate a big loss?
Um, I would have to review the statute, but it may be considered a fraudulent transfer to avoid, for example, criminal prosecution and forfeiture. I don't have an easy question for that. Um, but the thing is, the uh, property, if it was community, would otherwise be divided. And I think the person suing that couple together, or the person who was arrested or had assaulted the other person, could argue that any transfer of the property out of their name was a fraudulent transfer.
Got you. Okay. All right. That's good. And then you had mentioned prenups. Can you go more into detail on when that happens, how that conversation starts, and how that usually plays with your couples?
Sure. This is kind of the happy part of family law. People are engaged, they want to get married, and they're having an honest conversation with themselves about the property that they're bringing to the marriage and how they want to divide up property during the marriage. And, in the horrible situation where they may divorce, envisioning that and wanting to protect what they have. What I do with my um, cases um, have a consultation with the client and um, go over their finances, explain the process of a prenuptial agreement, and then look over their financial disclosures, their income, their assets and debts. And then I may either be the one to draft a prenuptial agreement or to review something that the other side has drafted, and then we negotiate over the final terms. And the sorts of things that are negotiated in a prenuptial agreement are assets and debts, either what they bring to the marriage or what they acquired during the marriage. And then, for example, protecting property that they have, retirement accounts, things of that nature. Also, spouse support is a very important consideration. When, let's say, everyone is employed, self-sufficient when they're coming into the marriage, but then 30 years passes, one party stopped working, became incapacitated, and then maybe entitled to a significant amount of spouse support. So people want to take care of that potential risk. It may waive spouse support or limit it to a certain amount. So prenuptial agreements are an important way of containing spouse support. And then, of course, there's income. A lot of people don't know that during the marriage, your income is community property. So everything, all your income and everything that you do with that income, like putting it into 401ks or retirement plans, can be divided in half. So you want to protect that income. And that matters whether you're earning $40 million or $40,000, because your income can grow over time. So that's prenuptial agreements in a nutshell.
Oh, wow. That's pretty heavy. Do you find people, if someone brings it up, do you find it a pretty good conversation for both parties, or do you find it difficult at sometimes?
No, typically there's no problem because parties settle on a division on their own. And, when working with attorneys later on, they may identify additional parts to consider. But it's rarely like a, make or break kind of consideration.
Okay, so thanks for that. And then, so let's talk about domestic violence. There's a lot of concern about, shelter in place and how the rise of domestic violence has contributed to that. Can I get your feedback on domestic violence and today's market?
Yeah, well, generally, domestic violence is not just physical violence. It's what everybody thinks about domestic violence, but it's one party assuming power over another in a range of areas: physical, psychological, financial, you name it. And there's a point where one party needs to escape. And I can speak from personal experience on this. My mother is the survivor of 23 years of domestic violence. She left my father when she felt she was going to die. And I helped her escape 3,000 miles from Las Vegas to Boston. and she's been alive and well since then. And during the shelter-in-place world, the very first week of the lockdown, the San Francisco prosecutor's office saw a 60% spike in domestic violence calls. And other community organizations are also seeing a lot of calls. And you should know, for the people watching this, that local community organizations and shelters are still operating, providing shelter, counseling, even help with drafting temporary restraining orders. But you should reach out to an attorney to help you with the life of a particular case, from drafting the restraining order, going to court, doing a trial. Somebody like me who does this a lot is able to help. And also, if you are having difficulty with a particular situation, you can't get out of the house and something dire is happening, you can text 911 to get immediate help if it's not safe to call. So that's something that people should consider.
Okay. Yeah, there's and someone could reach out to you if they need some resources and some feedback on that.
Sure.
Another thing is, this just came up to me. So how do you handle elderly? Do you have a good amount of elderly clients, or do you deal with elderly clientele?
I have dealt with elderly clients over the years, not elder abuse. I don't know if you're meaning that, but elderly clients who have accumulated some property and feel that it's time to move on in their situation. I represented one man, for example, who was 77 years old when he wanted to get his divorce. 35 years before, his wife told him that she wasn't in love with him anymore, but they agreed to stay together for the benefit of their children. And then he found love at the age of 77 and wanted to move on. So I helped him dispense with his property, with his wife, his retirement accounts, protect his income, and move on with his life. So that's what I can do for elderly people.
Wow. Okay. So life and love does not stop. It doesn't matter what age you are.
It doesn't stop at all.
Well, those are some you've covered a lot of good ground, and thank you so much. And, so for folks who, for any of the topics that we've talked about, or if they have any other questions, pertaining to their situation, how does one get a hold of you?
You can learn more about me on my website, www.sf, as in Frank, areafamilylaw.com. And then you can also email me at jane@sfareafamilylaw.com, or call me at 415-742-8072.
All right. Well, thank you. And for any of you guys that, if you want to follow up interview with other questions, please feel free to let us know. And what we'll do is we can, we like to talk about real life situations, and you would be protected. We're not going to bring up any names. It's just more of it's just informational, and we're just here to support you all.
Yes, all right. And I'm so happy that you had me on, and I'm happy to be a resource to the community and to all your viewers.
Absolutely. No, you have a lot to bring to the table. So thank you. And then until next time.
Until next time. Thank you.